India marks Republic Day tomorrow, but the traditional parade in New Delhi will look very different due to COVID-19. For the first time in over 50 years, there won't be a chief guest, as Neha Punya explains.
On this day, the Indian Constitution came into effect. The year was 1950. India was a newly independent, sovereign, democratic republic. 3 years before that, when India gained independence in 1947, the country faced many challenges. India still was finding her feet after being a British colony for 200 years.
The first time in over 50 years, there won't be a chief guest, as Neha Punya explains.
Every year, the annual Republic Day parade here in central Delhi is a grand affair, with the government pulling out all stops to put the country's military might on display. There are tanks on the ground and jets doing complicated maneuvers in the sky, and every year there is a foreign head of state who acts as the chief guest for the parade. And tens of thousands of spectators witness colourful cultural performances and march past by every military contingent. But this year, COVID-19 means the parade will break from tradition in many ways. For one, this will be the first time that India will not have a chief guest in 55 years. Boris Johnson was supposed to travel to India but cancelled his visit earlier this month because of rising COVID-19 cases in the UK. This year, the parade will also be much shorter. The distance that the contingents usually cover is over 8 kilometers, but this time they'll only cover less than half that length. And the parade itself will look different this time. The number of people in each contingent has been trimmed down to 96 from 144. Troops will march down Rajpath, but in socially distanced formations. Some performances have been cancelled. We'll still see cultural performances by children and folk artists, but there will be fewer participants and fewer guests as well. This year, only 25,000 spectators will be present compared to hundreds of thousands in any normal year. Social distancing norms will be imposed, and all guests will be expected to wear masks at all times. There will be thermal screening done at the entrance, and anyone found to have COVID-19 symptoms will be isolated immediately. Neha Punya, CNA, New Delhi.
On this day, the Indian Constitution came into effect. The year was 1950. India was a newly independent, sovereign, democratic republic. 3 years before that, when India gained independence in 1947, the country faced many challenges. India still was finding her feet after being a British colony for 200 years. One of the major challenges was that India did not have its own laws. India needed a rule book to move forward, a constitution of its own. On August 29th in 1947, 2 weeks after gaining independence, a 7-member drafting committee was appointed. B.R. Ambedkar was the chairperson. A few months later, on November 4th, 1947, a draft was finalized and submitted to the Indian Constituent Assembly. 2 years, various sessions, debates and modifications later, 2 handwritten copies of the Indian Constitution were signed in Hindi and English. On January 26, 1950, India held its first Republic Day parade. The first ever parade was performed at the Irvin Amphitheatre, which is now known as the Major Dhyan Chand Stadium. Dr. Rajendra Prasad took a ceremonial ride from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to the amphitheatre with the Indonesian President Sukarno, who was invited as a chief guest. With a 31-gun salute, India was declared a republic, and Dr. Rajendra Prasad became the first president. In his historic speech, President Prasad said, "Today, for the first time in our long and checkered history, we find the whole of this vast land, from Kashmir in the north to Cape Comorin in the south, from Kathiawar and Kutch in the west, Kokonda, and Kamrup in the east, brought together under the jurisdiction of one constitution and one union." The tricolour, India's national flag, was hoisted for the very first time. 3,000 officers of the armed forces and more than 100 aircraft participated. 7 massed bands represented the 3 armed forces. The state-of-the-art warfare equipment, stunts, flypasts and musical performances that we witnessed in the present times were not a thing back then.